you guys, it's good to be here. I want us to have an open conversation today. You don't know what, I'm gonna be really honest with you. A guy like me could not come in from the outside, never having political experience at the age of 38, run for US president and win without the first in the nation primary status right here in New Hampshire. We're gonna keep that intact. We do it that way for a reason. The reason why is, you know, if you guys are all right, I'm gonna turn this off. If we get hot, we'll turn this back on. It actually relates to what I was gonna say. There's no social media algorithms in the air between us. There's no TV screens or electronics in the air between us. It's just us, citizens in a room having an open conversation about the future of our country. You wanna know something? You wanna know what the best measure of the health of American democracy is? It is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. Right now, we're doing poorly. We're gonna be doing better. And the only way to get there is for all of us to start talking openly again. That's what we're gonna do tonight. I'm seeing a lot of new faces, and this is good. Actually, this is where I began my campaign. Very first campaign stop on the very first day at the first hour in the morning was actually here in Rochester. So we kicked this whole thing off. I met your mayor in that, like, right, you know, that river area back there looks pretty beautiful. We were hanging out there, we went for a walk, we went to the bakery, we had a great morning, and yeah, somebody came up to me recently and said, oh, when you came here to Rochester last time, you were at like 0% in the polls. I said, no. I was at 0.0% in the polls, to be precise. And the fact that you all have lifted me up, it's like good auspices to come back here. Feels good to be back at home where we began this. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. My parents came to this country 40 years ago with no money. 40 years later, in a single generation, I've gone on to found multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while marrying my wife, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That is the American dream. We should be proud of that American dream. But I am genuinely worried that that dream will no longer be available to my 2 sons and their generation unless we do something about it. The truth is, we're in the middle today of a national identity crisis. Faith, patriotism, hard work, family. These things have disappeared, only to be replaced by wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, globalism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And we have a moral vacuum, a black hole in our hearts. Young people, all of us, we hunger to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Yet we cannot even answer what it means to be an American today. And we human beings, we're like, in some ways we're like a bunch of blind bats. Flying around in a cave, we're lost, trying to figure out where we are. How does a bat figure out where it is? Echolocation, you got it, doesn't have eyes. It's got to send out the sonar signals. It bounces off the wall of the cave. It says, this is where I am. So we human beings, we do the same thing. We send out a signal. It bounces off of my belief in my family. The 2 parents who brought me into this world. That means something. That bounces back and says, this is where I am. Send out a signal that bounces off of my faith in God, my belief in this nation. These things are true. They mean something to me. That bounces back. It says, this is where I am. Send out a signal that bounces off of my hard work, the things I create in this world. I am proud of these things. They are true. That bounces back. It says, this is where I am. Well, what happens when these things each disappear? We send out these signals, and then nothing comes back. We are lost in that abyss. That is the vacuum. That is the void. And I think that, oddly enough, that might just be our opportunity as conservatives, as Americans, to now say, now we're done just complaining about what got us here. Now we're going to level up. We're going to do our part and fill that void with our own vision of what it means to be an American today. This is our moment. See, the left, they're very good at this, actually. They'll fill that void with something. They've had a lot of practice. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And what we've done for the last 10 years or whatever is we'll point out, and I'm not criticizing other people. I'm criticizing myself here, right? I've written 3 books about this stuff, analyzing this to death. And we can go into it today, too. We'll open this up. We'll have some questions soon. But we settle for just saying that, hey, here's what's wrong with that vision, without offering an actual affirmative vision of our own. So if the left has given us race, gender, sexuality, and climate, I want us talking more about the value of each individual, the family, the nation, God. Individual, family, nation, God, that beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to actually stand up for it. For too long, we as conservatives, we have been running from something. Now is our moment to actually start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be American. What does it mean to be an American? That's what we're going to talk about. To me, it means we believe in the ideals of the American Revolution. The ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago, in places not that far from where we're packed in tonight. Means we believe in ideals like meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence, that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why I've said I will end affirmative action in every area of American life. It has been a cancer on our national soul, and we will end it. What does it mean to be American? It means we believe in the rule of law. That if you're like my parents, you get to come to this country legally through the front door. They followed the rules. They paid their taxes. They raised 2 sons. Both of us went on to found companies that helped thousands of Americans. But it also means that your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why I've said I will use the U.S. military to secure our own southern border, and if necessary, our northern border too. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means we believe in this radical dream that our founding fathers had. A radical dream that I have as a citizen today. That the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. Not this managerial, bureaucratic deep state that runs the show today. So I've said that, you know what, if I can't be your next U.S. president and collect a paycheck from you all, the taxpayer, for more than 8 years, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats reporting into me. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy. This is how you drain the swamp. And there are government agencies that should not exist, that have become so rotten they can't just be reformed, like the FBI, or the IRS, or the ATF, or the CDC, or the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the U.S. Department of Education. Then we will not just get in there and tinker around the edges. We will get in there and shut them down. That is how we revive the integrity of a constitutional republic. These aren't Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. These aren't black ideas or white ideas. These are fundamentally American ideals. that we fought a revolution in 1776 to secure. You know, we face a choice in this GOP primary. We do. Next week begins the debates. I think 1 week from today or tomorrow, whenever it is, next Wednesday. And you know what? I don't bash my other competitors in this race. I don't even view them as my competitors. I view them as my colleagues. I view you as my colleagues. We're each going to have to do our part in driving this national revival. But the truth is, we do face a choice. And I think the choice we face in this primary is this. Do you want incremental reform? Or do you want revolution?
Revolution!
I stand on the side of revolution. The American Revolution. Those 1776 ideals we fought for, to say that we the people create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That we the people can settle our differences through free speech and open debate in the public square, where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally. Not in the back of palace halls in old world England, not in the back corner office of BlackRock's corner office on Park Avenue today, not in the back of three-letter government agency offices in Washington, D.C. No. We the people create a constitutional republic where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally. That is who we are. That is what, dare I say, we must revive if we're going to have a continuing republic in this country. I'll tell you, the thing for me is, November 2024, we're going to hear a lot about this 2024 election. First of all, you don't hear me talk about Republicans and Democrats, it's boring. Actually, we have the managerial class in both of them, if we're telling the truth. You don't hear me talk about the radical Joe Biden agenda, not because it is not radical, because it's so obviously radical and flawed for this country that we'll be sick to our face till blue in the face if we keep just talking about that instead of offering a vision of our own. But the reality is, we got to explain that this isn't even the guy who's in charge. Joe Biden is hardly the president of the United States today. I'm not even going to be running against Joe Biden in the general election. You hold my feet to that fire. You mark my words. When I'm the nominee of this party, I will not be running against Joe Biden. It will be the next puppet that they trot along. So let's stop talking about Biden and the radical Democrats. Start talking about what we stand for. Explain why shutting down the administrative state, how that will stimulate the economy, how that will restore accountability in government, how that will revive the truth of a three-branch constitutional republic. If we do that, we win this election in a landslide. And by the way, this cannot be a 50.1 election. It just can't. I don't think our nation can take a 50.1 election where we would let MSNBC declare it 7 days later who happens to have won the election, they trot that out. No, that's not going to work. We're skating on thin ice right now. We need a moral mandate, a Reagan 1980 style moral mandate. And honest to God, the reason I'm in this race is I believe I'm the only person who actually can deliver that landslide margin by bringing young people with us. Said a Gen Z right here. What's your name again? Matthew. Yeah, you said it well. We'll bring Gen Z with us. You too. I appreciate that. Good to see you again. That is what's going to make this difference. And so for me, November 2024, that's not the destination. That is the start line. The true destination for me is January 2033. When I leave office, when my older son is not even yet in high school, what do I want to tell you all? What do I want to tell him that we actually accomplished in those 8 years? I want to tell you that once again in January 2033 in this country, we have 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. That we shut down the administrative deep state, that we reduced the federal employee headcount by over 75%. I believe that is possible. I believe we will have done it in those 8 years. I want to tell you that we are no longer dependent in the United States of America on our enemy, communist China, for our modern way of life, that we have declared independence from our enemy. I want to tell you in January 2033 that we are growing as an economy, again at the fastest rate in the developed world, by embracing capitalism rather than apologizing for it. Most importantly, I want to tell you, and I tell my two sons, that we as Americans are once again proud to be citizens of this nation. I think it can be so again in this country. The only question is, do we actually have the courage to stand up and do what is required to get there? For too long, we have been celebrating our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common creed that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. I believe it deep in my bones that those ideals still exist. I am running for president to revive them. E pluribus unum means from many, one. That is what we need to revive. And the way we're going to do it is we're all going to have to start speaking in public what we otherwise would have said in private. Speak those truths, those hard truths. Speak the truth without fear. That is what we are doing tonight. We stand up for the truth and we speak that truth. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism is the best system known to man to lift us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We stand up for the truth. We fight for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the Revolution of 2024. Thank you all for welcoming me. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless our United States of America. That is who we are. Thank you. Thank you.
Wondering what you're going to do about Joe Biden's war.
War.
Biden's war.
Joe Biden's war. You know, it's like Iraq, Vietnam, now it's Ukraine. Fail to learn from your past mistakes, you're going to make the same one over and over again. And I think you're interested in calling it Joe Biden's war because we're going to say something that you're not supposed to say in public, which I believe is absolutely true. This is a repayment for a multi-million-dollar bribe. That is what this war is all about. Pay that with interest 1,000 times over. So here's my view. Okay, the purpose of the U.S. military is to protect the U.S. homeland, period. So we will not use our military to defend somebody else's border in God knows where, an invasion across their border, when we have an invasion across our own southern border right here at home. We will use our own military to protect our own border. That's how we stand for American interests. I will end that Ukraine war. I will do it by not giving another dime of support to this and pretend like it's a paragon of democracy. Give me a break. I mean, this guy has like eliminated 11 opposition parties, consolidated state media into one state media arm. Coming here in his cargo pants, Pied Piper from Hamlin has half the Democratic Party and 3/4 of the Republican Party eating out of his hand. I don't really get it. It doesn't make sense to me, but
And jailed priests.
of course, his assault on Christianity in the country. It's actually one of the great telltale signs of somebody who's actually heading in a dangerous direction is he who attacks the religious in his own nation. Right? So actually, yeah, this kind of stuff I'm saying you're not supposed to say it this way, but let's just do it anyway. Put yourself in the shoes of, two countries are in a war. Call it country A and country B. Okay, Russia's country A, Ukraine's country B. Put yourself in the shoes of leading country A, Russia. Okay. Now you're saying country B, okay, Ukraine. The U.S. has no national interest there, but they're arming them to the teeth. And then they have no reason for why they're doing it. They violated the James Baker 1990 commitment of not 1 inch past Eastern Europe. So why is the U.S. acting so weird? And then you discover, oh, wait a minute. That country just paid a $5 million bribe to a guy who couldn't get honest work at a fast food company, now sitting on the board of an energy company in Europe. Oh, that makes sense to me. I guess like they're just making good on their bribe, right? Believe me, if it had been Russia doing the same thing to Trump and we were coming to Russia's side in its battle against Ukraine, there'd be impeachment inquiries on day one. So we've lost our sense of actually being able to see that truth because our media is in on the act. Republicans, Democrats, and even our media stop us from asking those most basic questions. So I'm going to end that war with a deal that freezes the current lines of control, that further makes a hard commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. Those are big wins for Putin. And to be honest, in any good deal, everybody has to win. But there's a bigger win I'll require in return, which is that Russia exit its military alliance with China. The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest threat to U.S. security in the future. And to my shock, nobody in either major political party is talking about it. And this is why I don't talk about Republicans and Democrats. It doesn't matter. I mean, these are labels. I'm not some partisan political guy. Right? I'm a business guy. I built businesses. That's what I've done. I built a biotech company, developed 5 approved medicines. I built an asset management firm called Strive that competes directly against the ESG industrial cartel of BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. That's my world. But I think it's going to take someone coming in from the outside to actually get our head out of the mud that our foreign policy establishment has been stuck in for the last 25 years. Now I'll tell you this, people say, are you too young to run for president? They told me that in the first phase of the campaign. They said, 37-year-old's too young, so we made a decision to have me turn 38 years old a few days ago. So now 38, so we shot that one down. But the other thing I'll say is, Thomas Jefferson, he was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Alexander Hamilton was in his early 20s at the same time. The truth is, if you look at the track record of our foreign policy establishment over the last 25 years, if somebody breaks your car and keeps breaking your car and then breaks your car again, you don't turn your keys over to the same guy. Might just think about handing over the keys to somebody new to finally fix that problem. And that's what we'll do, starting with ending the war in Ukraine. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.
Melinda from Somersworth. Thank you for your courage. In light of the last several years, I think it takes somebody with major courage to do what you're doing. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
I am so drawn to term limits, I can't tell you, and I really appreciate you bringing it to the forefront. I just wonder how you are going to get that buy-in that we're going to need for the ones that are already there that you need support from, that don't want to leave.
So this is a great question. And I want to put a fine point on this because my focus on term limits is a little bit different for what's at the top of my list than from the traditional discussion about term limits. I like the traditional discussion too, but that's really hard. I favor 2 term limits in the Senate, 3 terms in the House. That will require a constitutional amendment, which requires a supermajority of the exact same people you're trying to term limit out. And so realistically, I'm not a guy who makes false promises. Realistically, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But here's the good news. The more important kind of term limit that we need isn't even for the people who we have to at least elect back every few years. The real term limits we need are for the people who we never elected to run the government. And yet they're the ones who are actually making the true laws of this country. Congress is a joke. Took my son there. It feels like I'm going to an archaic museum. It's the drab three-letter agencies where all the regulations are actually getting made today. And here's the good news. As the US President, Article 2 of the Constitution says that I lead the executive branch of the government. So you know what? I'm going to implement term limits for the bureaucracy without asking Congress for permission or for forgiveness. Because I understand what it means to lead the executive branch. I've been a CEO. If somebody works for you and you cannot fire them, that means they don't work for you. It means you work for them because you're responsible for what they do without having any authority to change it. And I refuse to be that hollowed out husk of a puppet sitting in the White House. No, I did not leave a comfortable life to go do this to be a symbol. We did it to actually lead with integrity. And you know what? They tripped up President Trump over this one. He said drain the swamp. I respect a lot of what he did. Trump was, I think, the best president of the 21st century by far. That's why you will not hear me bashing him. But the truth is, we require a unique combination, not just an outsider and a CEO, but someone who actually understands the law and the Constitution in this country. So what do they tell him? Otherwise, you're going to be duped, and he was duped. The managerial class tells him that, oh, no, you can't do it because you have these civil service protections. Read the law. The civil service protections only protect against individual employee firings. They do not apply to mass layoffs. And mass layoffs are absolutely what I am bringing to the DC bureaucracy. So that is how you actually get that job done. Look for this around. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Way to run the semi truck through the Overton window, as you said.
I love that. Still driving.
You said it. So, good evening, Mr. Hopefully Future President. I'm Jason Brewster from Central Mass, and host of Brewster Call, just so you know. So, I'm happy to join the Ramaswamy Tsunami. I wanted to ask you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
What do you think about planned obsolescence? I know that like the roads and the infrastructure apply when they've got like 2,000-year-old concrete from Rome that they figured out how it works, and definitely in like tech companies they also have that as a thing. Is there anything you would or could do as U.S. president, or is it more of a private sector thing?
Well, I think the first step to take is that the government has made it exceedingly difficult to engage in new construction of any kind in this country. Actually, on that first day when I was in this campaign, you all probably know this, actually here in Rochester, there's a bunch of new construction going up in terms of apartment buildings. So, put the hard hat on, walked around, and we talked to the people there. What's stopping you from going faster? Those of you who live here may know that they've been actually working on that for some amount of time. It's way beyond the schedule that they would have ideally wanted. Regulations coming from the EPA, coming from those three-letter agencies from on high. And so the first and easiest step before you have a debate of, oh, well, should we actually be investing in our infrastructure with taxpayer dollars? I'll make this one easy. I don't want to be building Ukraine's infrastructure, okay? I don't want to be, our taxpayer money, literally it is our own dollars that are funding the payroll, the salaries of Ukrainians' deep state, okay? So that's crazy. So is there a better use of money? Would I rather put that in infrastructure here than infrastructure in God knows where? Definitely here. And actually, before we even get to that discussion, I think the private sector can get a meaningful, if not the entire, share of the work done if we actually take the boot of the administrative state, the regulatory state, off the neck of that private sector. Across every sector, from housing. That's why we have a housing crisis, housing price crisis in this country. Constrained supply, not meeting the demand. Why is the supply constrained? Because we have regulations that make it impossibly difficult for new builders to actually build, bring new both commercial and residential construction to market. Why are energy costs up? Well, we have a Department of Interior that is fundamentally hostile to drilling and fracking in this country. If you stand for economic growth, as I do, we have to embrace the idea that we will drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. That is how you unlock an economy. That is how you bring down cost. That is how you pave the way for a private sector to first step up and avoid the otherwise planned obsolescence that we're in. I like that phrase. I'll be taking it with me on the campaign trail. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Vivek.
Good to see you.
My name is Archie Keltz. I'm from Laconia, New Hampshire. I am working to become a licensed architect. I'm 24 years old. I want to ask you about aesthetics. A lot of conservative politicians, they're perfectly happy to talk about truth, as you are. They're perfectly happy to talk about goodness or morality. But that third transcendental, beauty, is always kind of left by the wayside. I think it might be because people feel like if they talk about objective beauty, they have to look in the mirror and see how we're all pretty flawed. And maybe we shouldn't be wearing the socks and sandals. But I think we're all a pretty good looking crowd in here this evening. And I think we can talk about this. So I want to know, there was a bill that was floated by the Trump administration back in 2018, something like that, that classical architecture should be the mandated style for federal architecture, civic buildings. The buildings that our bureaucrats go into every morning has been brutalist since the 1960s. Ugly, modern, just glass, metal, concrete. Do you think that the law can be a teacher in this way, in creating a more thriving sense of national identity by mandating federal architecture to be classical in design?
A very fascinating question. I would say that's a first on the campaign trail. What's your name?
Archie,
Archie, how old are you?
I'm 24.
24-year-old. You're asking a creative question. How about this? I like that. There's a real power to your question, right? I mean, we as human beings, why do the towering spires of a university look the way they do? You know, we're not just theoretical souls, we're embodied in bodies. Same thing for our national soul, right? I mean, the United States is a nation built on ideals, but we need the geographic space in order for that nation to embody itself. Well, I think there is something to be said to look at the places where we learn, the places where we decide, we get together as a body politic to govern, and to have an innate sense of awe as we look at those buildings. Now, here's the part where I always say I'm always going to tell you what I think. Right? My job as a candidate is to tell you who I am, what I stand for, what my beliefs are. Your job is to decide whether you want to vote for that or not. If everybody in this country knows who I am and what I stand for, and choose you want somebody else, I'm cool with that. Okay, I'll put my head on my pillow at night. So that's my version of saying I'll give you an honest answer to one part. To be honest, that probably goes in the other direction. The fact that those three-letter buildings, I've been to some of them, you know, FDA, SEC, EPA. I mean, these are some of the ugliest, godforsaken buildings you have ever seen, known to mankind in the United States of America. I gotta say, that's gonna make it all the easier to get in there and shut them down. And then we actually revive, I think, a national identity on the back of that, grounded in the substance of saying, because you know what annoys the heck out of me? Is that I took my son to Washington, D.C. about a month ago. We went to Congress, Capitol Hill. Stunning. It's beautiful. And yet when I think about what that represents today, it's like as though it's an archaic museum. These are not the places where the laws of the country are made. It's a lie. We tell the people that this is where the laws are made. They're made in the drab government buildings. And so I want to be inspired by the truth of it. I don't want to be tricked into submission because of my native human instincts. And so right now, I believe when they give you lemons, you make lemonade. I'm going to view the positive side of that and say it's going to be that much easier to get in there, send back 75% of the people to go find honest work in the private sector, move the rest of those agencies across the country from Ohio to Iowa to Nevada for the remaining government agencies that remain. And then we will build anew from the model of the Phoenix in Washington, D.C., not through incremental reform, but through quantum leap revolution. That's where I'm at on it.